Welcome to the Riff. Today, Justin gets to sit down with Preston Ulmer. They get to discuss deconstruction when it comes to faith. They also get to talk about Preston's new book, Deconstruct Faith, Discover Jesus. We hope today is hopeful and helpful. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to the Riff. Listen.
It's good to be here.
No, don't say that yet. Now that you just, now they know you're not Jeremy.
Start again.
No, I was going to say, it's just, we don't have Jeremy with us today. And I know as a listener, I know you're probably heartbroken, you're disappointed, maybe upset, maybe mad. I don't know. I don't know the emotions, but I hope one emotion that you do have is excited because I got Preston Ulmer sitting right across from me. Oh my goodness. Preston, welcome.
What are we going to talk about?
Oh, we're going to talk about some deconstruction. We're going to talk about, you're an author, like you write books for fun.
I wouldn't say for a living, but yeah.
But you
let me know when it becomes a living.
But you got a new one.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about that. We got a lot to talk about. It's going to be fun.
Great.
This is multiple times on the Riff. Is that correct? I mean, this is time 3. Is that right?
I think so.
People just keep screaming.
Oh,
we
do
want
they?
More Preston on the Riff.
Or we're like, oh, we need another guest.
Preston's here. Yeah.
You actually just called me this morning. I'm like, yeah, sure.
You want to come in? Yeah.
Just
no,
kidding.
we've had this. We've had it planned.
Yeah.
It has been planned. But the conversation has not been planned.
No, because we're riffing.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, welcome.
Thanks.
Again. No, not to you, to the listener.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
welcome,
sorry.
listener.
No, I'm sorry. I should have been more
listener.
specific. Yeah. No, welcome to the listener. Again, Jeremy will be back with us shortly. He's on vacation. He's in Idaho.
Oh.
Yeah,
well, good
beautiful
for
Idaho.
him. What do you think? What do you do in Idaho?
I don't know. I just learned. I've known that he's from Coeur d'Alene for a long time.
Coeur d'Alene?
Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Sounds like a medication. Go pick up your Coeur
Did you get
d'Alene
your Coeur
later.
d'Alene? Did you get your Coeur d'Alene shot?
Put it on your wound. Cortisone. That's cortisone.
Oh, yeah. So I've known that he's been there or been from there for a long time. And then Jamie was like, "Hey, I found this place that I feel like we gotta go to."
Okay.
I was like, "Where?" She's like, "It's beautiful. We had a couple of friends go there." I'm like, "Where is it?" She's like, "Coeur d'Alene."
Did she know?
No. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm
know.
gonna look up Coeur d'Alene.
I know it's really pretty. So I don't know what you do up there, but apparently my wife wants to go.
Potatoes.
But I don't know. It's not like field. It looks really pretty. It's like it's just pretty.
Well,
yeah.
Apparently you can vacation there.
Shocked. I was shocked.
Yeah. If
so
Jeremy never comes back and he stays in Coeur d'Alene, I'm probably gonna go check it out.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But he'll be back. He's out there. I'm sure he's having a grand time.
Yeah.
His parents are out there. So yeah.
Cool.
So today, Preston, thanks for sitting down. Little deconstruction action. I got a couple questions for you. Are you ready?
I don't know if I have answers, but yeah, let's try.
All right. Okay, so let's talk. We're going to talk about the series that we're currently in.
Okay.
Which you led off and started that whole series.
Okay.
Betrayed by Belief.
Which I did have someone come up to me afterwards and say, "So when is Jeremy back?"
I'm sure.
I said I miss him too. But keep going. Yeah. Keep going.
Well, it's fine. People love it when you speak. It's great. Yeah. It's great. You started it off, Betrayed by Belief. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about the book and what that is. I just feel like it's a super helpful conversation, man.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about those pieces.
Well, thanks for having the conversation.
No, thank you. I'm sorry. You're sitting on Jeremy's side, by the way. Anytime he's gone and I have to sit down with somebody,
someone else there.
I've sat on that side and it feels wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I don't know. There's big shoes right here.
He left his shoes?
Yeah, he left them here.
That's weird.
It says, "Try to fill my
So
shoes."
odd.
There's a little note in there.
Bold.
Just kidding.
What's a deconstruction?
Oh, okay. Well, deconstruction, it's a scary word for a lot of people, in all honesty. It shouldn't be. Some people think it's just questioning the faith. But it is, I think, picking apart things. And so the things I say are like tradition, belief, practice. It could be anything like that, and testing it. And you're going, okay, is this truthful? Is this useful? And is this effective? Those three pieces actually are really important. So we have historically in Christianity been like, oh, it's truthful. And you're like, okay, but how you use that, whether you use that as a weapon or use that as like as a flashlight to help people move forward, that's really important too. So that goes to the effective piece. So anyway, it's testing things, testing. And the reason it's becoming more and more, we just have more information available. And you have a whole generation of people, millennials, that are going, hey, I grew up in a tradition that taught me this, and I'm realizing not only is that not effective, it may not be truthful. So it's becoming not just a buzzword, it's something people do now everywhere.
Do you think it's something people do now, or something people do or have done? And
I think there's a word to it now.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so deconstruction, it's not. I mean, if the academic term doesn't mean what it means today, so I'm using more of a cultural language there. But yeah, it's what people have been doing. I mean, if you're a Protestant, this is your heritage, right? I mean, if you're a Catholic and you're listening to this, please keep listening. But if you're a Protestant and you're like, yeah, this is what it was the Reformation, if not a deconstruction, right?
Yeah.
This is kind of what happens every 500 years or so in the Christian tradition. Yeah. I forget who it was. It was an Anglican person who said every 500 years, the church is due for a giant rummage sale. Like, deconstruct. So no, I think people have been doing it, but I do think, Justin, it's different than questioning. I think questions are like, how do I know God exists? Questions would be like, why did this happen? And those would be more like, not just experiential, but those are more in the realm of maybe apologetics. Deconstruction's like, I was taught this, and I want to challenge
and it no longer serves me.
That's
or
right.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
You talk in your book about like the difference of deconversion and deconstruction. We talked about that. I mean, we've had talks, and what is that? What's the line there, right? Like how do you know that I'm deconstructing? I'm deconverting. Like what do you see in the conversations you've had with people? What does that look like?
Okay, I'm going to say something.
What?
It's going to sound like heresy, but this is the riff.
Goodness. Okay, wait. So that's like the disclaimer?
That this is the riff?
No, that it sounds like heresy. Yeah. And what do you mean by that? That's
I'm going to say something bold. Let me put it that way. No, it's a good thing. I mean, like, hey, if you've never been
that means
tempted to be a heretic,
that means
then
either
you
that the riff is very bold or no one listens to this. So
I think the riff is very bold. I've been saving this just for this moment. Okay, here's what honestly I think. I think we've catapulted people from deconstruction into deconversion. I think we have created this like, oh, you're not one of us anymore. Oh, you're asking questions about that. And we've woven in these things, these agendas and these cognitive biases into our Christian faith, and we've attached a Bible verse to it. And so we say, to believe the Bible, you have to believe this. And then when someone says, I don't know if I believe that, then we say, well, then you don't believe the Bible, you're not a Christian. And then we've catapulted them. And now we have, I think, as Christians, we've really helped the deconversion camp. And it's what's in the book too, is people are like, I didn't want to be out. I just didn't agree with that tradition or with that belief. I mean, I remember interviewing one person and him saying, I was like on the tree of Christianity. He said, there's a branch called Reformed, and then I was a twig of a twig of a twig of that branch. And they were told, because they didn't believe in women in ministry, or that they believed women could minister equally, if not better than men, that they were told, well, then you don't believe in the Bible. And you're like, this is ludicrous. So before I say what the two are, I think we've really helped the deconversion camp. Deconstruction is saying, I'm not saying I don't believe in Jesus. I'm not saying I don't believe in God. Like some spiritual grounding principles are typically there and present in someone deconstructing. Deconversion's like, I am saying I don't believe in those things. I am saying I don't believe in Jesus. And they've deconverted. And what's just such a shame is a lot of times we've exiled them before they exited, which I think terrible.
For me, I think one of the things that you have said, and I think you put it into the whole fuse method, I'm going to get into that.
Sure.
I feel like the E part of that, which is the engage with what remains part, for me is the most important thing.
Yeah.
In knowing, like, when you're asking questions, when you're upset, when you're mad, when you're hurt, when you've got church trauma, when you have all of these things, right? Something remains.
Something does.
Something does.
Even
right?
if it's those experiences.
Even if it's those experiences. Yep. So it's just this whole thought process, I think, of never to stop wrestling.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I think that's the most important part. So when I hear people that are scared of the words deconstruction or even scared of the word deconversion, for me, I'm like, I'm not scared of either.
Correct.
What I'm scared of is the conversation going away.
That's so
right.
good.
Like that's what I'm scared of. And I think that's what you do such a good job of. And you do this with our staff. You do this with people. I've been able to do life with you for a couple of years now. I mean, you and Lisa do this. Like you live it.
Oh, thanks.
And you do that. You bring that out in people. And I think it's so important, right? And I think it's important for the church to understand that the conversation isn't scary. The scary thing is when it stops.
Well,
right?
and then the question, why do we stop it? Right. Why do we stop the conversation?
Right. So how do you personally, like you, Elisa, and the girls, like how do you cultivate that kind of atmosphere in your home, have that kind of just kind of view, right? Well, you definitely have beliefs and traditions that you hold tight to, right? Like you still have this like very just open-handed approach and mentality that you're honestly, I would consider you very, very safe. Right. And meaning not like vanilla. I would consider you a safe person. If I had something that I'm like, man, you'd be a first call for me. Right. Well, so how do you cultivate that?
We have a pretty generous orthodoxy. Okay. So meaning I would hope we major on the majors and minor on the minors. And I don't like the conversation, nor do we have the conversation, who's in, who's out. Okay. So you can take something. If the girls are 10 and 8, so their judgment mechanism in their brain is starting to rev up, okay? Because they're watching the world around them, they're creating friend groups and cliques, and they're learning more and all those things. So we do have conversations where they're like, oh, I don't know why this person did that. I don't know if we're friends anymore. So then we back up, okay, and we go, whoa, that doesn't ruin friendship. Okay, so we try to blur that line, if not, like we try to erase it, but if not, at least blur it a lot. Who's in, who's out. And I just seriously, zero interest in determining that. I just don't care. When people say, well, does this person get in? Do they? I don't care. Like, I don't know and I don't care. I care about them and I care that they would have a relationship with God. But that conversation is the most boring and ridiculous conversation we can have.
We had a conversation. I didn't. Jeremy had this on the Riff a couple episodes back. Bob and Gertie was on here.
Yeah.
And he was talking about this whole idea, right? And he's spent his whole life as a missionary, right? And living in these different cultures and being an outsider and just having this whole mentality. And he said something very similar to this of he doesn't really necessarily look at this anymore as in who's in and who's out situation. It's a who's already sitting at the table and who's on their way.
That's great.
Right? Like, he's like, everybody's on this journey, and it's not this like, whoa, no. He's like, the Father's calling everybody home, right? Like, that's not, your job is not to send the invitation. Your job is to get the table ready.
Yeah.
Right? Like, So keep going.
No, that's great. And it is it's an orientation towards Jesus, right? I believe we're all oriented towards God. Okay. So even if I was talking to a Buddhist, I would say the same thing. I think we're oriented towards the divine would probably be how I would word it to someone that isn't of a Christian tradition. When we move closer, we find out more about that, the divine God, and then we find out more about ourselves. What we do in that interaction is really important. It's really important. And that's when, in the Christian tradition, we'll use the word salvation, right? That's when we're saved. That's when we go, oh, I recognize you as Jesus, and I want you in my story. And then that's salvation. And so our goal really is like that. Like, how do we prepare the table for people? So our Christianity is pretty generous. And I mean that historically. Like, I remember a time someone walking into, it was before I worked here, walking in my office, and it was a pastor's kid. And they said, I just wanted to know, I don't think I could be a Christian. And I said, why? And he said, because I don't believe in hell the way that my dad believes in hell. And we just got off the phone. So his dad had told him, well, if you don't believe that, then you don't believe the Bible. It's the whole thing we just talked about. And I said, why don't you come in? So we're talking, and I said, historically, there's these views, even within Christianity. There's these different views of what the afterlife is like for people who don't know and love God, okay? So I try to word it, I try to be very clear with my wording and not use just these bucket vocabulary, this bucket vocabulary, just catch all, okay? So I said, there's these views. And he said, you're telling me I can believe any of those? I said, what I'm telling you is you can wrestle with this for the rest of your life and not know what you believe and still have a relationship with Jesus. And so I think for us, it's like, and here's the other thing. If I were to just show all my cards, I don't know another way to be Christian. So when you said, how do you do this? I'm like, well, I don't know another way. Being a certainty-seeking Christian to me is like impossible. It's just impossible. I don't know how to do it. It feels repulsive to me. It feels totally disconnected from the entire world. So I don't know how to. So that's kind of what we teach our kids. So when they have questions, whatever the question is, we'll ask with them. We'll laugh about certain answers. We'll say, what do you think? Or does it make a difference when we met this person and talked to them? What do you think the Bible says about it? What do you think Jesus says about it? We do try to go back to the authority of Jesus on everything. And so, yeah, I mean, we'll find out in like 10 years if it worked. But yeah, that to me is being generous with your Christianity and realizing this is really big. This is a really big tent.
The people that are listening or have had conversations like this, and they're like, man, I love the idea of this. It's just a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope, Preston.
Let's talk about that slippery slope.
You are messing with fire. That's what you're doing.
Or
Preston.
sending people to it.
Or
Right.
So what's your response to that? How do you walk through that conversation with somebody?
Okay, what's the slippery slope?
I think people, at least in my experience, when I'm talking to people about this, I think that their biggest hang up is that if you let go of that doctrine, if you let go of that belief, what are you going to let go of, right? If you remove this spring, what are you going to, you're no longer going to be able to jump, right? Like there's no safety there. Like, you can't move that around, right? Because ultimately they're afraid of removing Jesus from the picture, which I get. I'm like, no, I don't want to.
I'm not actually saying that. Yeah.
but it's that whole piece to where you did an awesome illustration in the message that you gave to start Beyond Betrayed by Belief of the whole Jenga tower, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Of removing all of these different things and wrestling with them and maybe moving them around. It does not necessarily destroy this whole thing that we call faith and Christianity. It changes it, right? But it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't remove who Jesus is, right? It actually maybe even makes it a little clearer.
You know, I have this funny, this is just a funny, like my imagination's being like, I wonder when God was like, I'm going to go to earth. It didn't happen like this, okay? I mean, obviously it's pre-planned.
We feel it's like a Far Side. It's like a comic book. I don't know.
No, but what I'm saying is this. Like, I wonder if Jesus...
Did you ever read Far Side?
I did read Far Side. I like it.
Is that still a thing?
I don't think so. If it is, someone send it our way.
Are comics still a thing in the newspaper? Are newspapers still a thing?
I don't think so. I mean,
all right, keep going.
I don't know. I haven't signed up for one in a while. Or
Did
ever.
you have to sign up for
or
it?
ever? No, or ever. I try to sound smart there.
I don't know how I got them as a child. Like, was
someone rode their bike?
That's
and then
not
they're
real.
like,
Did they really was like a paper boy?
Or Jehovah's Witness, or they did both. It was like they're like throwing newspapers your way.
I guess I've never thought about how I got newspapers as a child.
Just appeared there.
No, keep going.
I mean, what I was saying was like, I wonder if Jesus is like, I'm going to help them deconstruct to get to my foundation. They've gotten so far. They've built so much stuff on top of me because when you hear him, even like the Sermon on the Mount, so this goes to your slippery slope. When on the Sermon on the Mount, he's like, and if you build, he ends it with, and if you build on what I say and you do what I say, you're building on a solid foundation. But then you read the whole thing before then, you're like, oh my word, he tore everything apart. Blessed are the meek, blessed are the poor. Blessed are those who mourn. Hey, you've heard do this to your enemy. I say do this to your enemy. Like the whole thing is him being like, welcome to the slippery slope. But you're slipping towards me, not away from me. But it feels like you're slipping away because you've built on the wrong thing, right? So the slippery slope in Scripture is actually building on sand is like a literal slippery slope. Outside of that, you build on Jesus and like he's like, you're solid. And so to the person who says, I think it's slippery slope, you're like, oh, this doctrine and this one, I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know who said it, but a faith that can't be tested can't be trusted. Okay, so
I said that.
Did you? Yeah. I think it was right before this. Copyright at Justin. But But it's true. Like, if you can't test this thing, and if I'm not allowed to look at traditions and believe, then I'm not actually following Jesus. Like, I'm not following him. He did this, and he made people so nervous they killed him. Okay? So if you're nervous, what we're talking about is getting to the surest foundation. So if someone has a more sure foundation than Jesus, let's talk about it, right? And I think that's the challenge he gives them, is what else is going to last in a storm? And so anyways, when someone says it's a slippery slope, and what they're talking about is, look, let's talk, like they're talking about, okay, it's a slippery slope if you question Christian doctrine around hell, sexuality, what the inerrancy of Scripture, all this stuff.
Right.
And I'm like, it's a slippery slope if you don't ask the question. Like, because then your kids, good luck having them fall in love with Jesus, right? Because then being connected to your neighbors in the world, good luck. Like, that's a slippery slope. And I think it fully compromises, when you don't do those things, I think it compromises the ideal of love. So now how am I supposed to love someone not like me? Right?
Right.
So to me, that feels way more slippery of like, well, so I'm going to not live like Jesus in order to preserve tradition, or I can not preserve tradition in order to live like Jesus. And it's always going to feel slippery. It's just, what are you slipping towards, I guess? And I'm an advocate of saying, I think you're slipping towards a Jesus-looking God. And other people are like, no, you're not. Anyways, that's a long answer to your question.
What's one of the things that you see as you have conversations with people? You're able to interview quite a few people for specifically this newer book. But what's kind of the theme that starts the deconstruction process that you've seen? Were you able to kind of pinpoint that?
Yeah, the way Christians treat them in their questions. Yeah. I mean, hands down.
Yeah.
Hands down.
And so I would say that's why, for me, I think when you talk about, again, fuse, the F part of that, like the specific part.
Finding the specific, yeah.
I feel like that's the best part of your entire thing. Because I think that you can get, from my experience, from family members, again, it can be so overwhelming. You can get so upset and so mad at whether it be experience. You do want to just be like, this whole thing, this is stupid, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I think find the specific piece is so important. So walk through that. Walk through, what do you mean by find the specific? And how do you do that? How do you actually take yourself in a very emotional state and probably very tender state of maybe having a question and being told no, or having a thought and being told that you're a heretic, or having all of these pieces, right? Like, how do you engage with what remains, and how do you find the specific?
Well, there is some sort of like a research muscle to that. So it is saying, I'm not looking to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm not looking to do that, right? And it is hard. So anyone who's listening and they're like, I am deconstructing my faith, I'm like, I know, like, the first thing we want to do is like get rid of it all, right? It hurt me, because it hurts. And a lot of time it's a person or a group of people that will initiate it. And here's what I mean. Either you meet someone that you used to condemn and you're like, oh, wait a second, I'm challenging my own bias now, or someone is hurtful to you. Usually it's one of the two. So what you're trying to do is say, okay, what am I dealing with? Am I dealing with, like, what's the big category? Okay, I'm dealing with hypocrisy in the church. Okay, that would be a massive category. And then you're like, okay, was it personal, or is it something I'm looking at? Like, is it a headline that I'm seeing? Is it all the documentaries that keep coming my way? Is it what people are talking about at my workplace? Because most people don't work at a church, right? So is it like, hey, it's what people are talking about, and the hypocrites. So then you're like, okay, it's personal. Okay, was that event, like, during my formative years as a kid? Was that event to one of my kids? Was that event to me? You're just trying to get specific, and then to say, okay, I would like to deconstruct that. I don't want to say everyone's a hypocrite, because that's just not true, right? Or if it is true, then I must include myself in that, and now we're in trouble. But I'm saying, like, how specific can I get and say that's the thing I want to deconstruct? And I'm actually a fan of do this with people. So tell someone, hey, I'm actually walking through some stuff with my Christian faith. Can I walk through this with you and someone that you trust? And tell them what you're doing. I mean, do it with someone. I do this with people. There's some specific things right now, even in my life, that I know I'm deconstructing. And because I'm trying to get back to Jesus, I'm like, it just doesn't look like Jesus. So I'm trying to get back to him in this. So I have people that I've talked to that say, yeah, I will go with you on that journey. When you find the specific, and then you're like, and then that's the you go, where's this come from? Where's that come from? Just the process itself, what we know like is you could deconstruct a whole lot of things, but the minute we try doing all of that at once, for example, if we said all churches are a fraud, okay, so this would be something that's come, I mean, we've probably all heard this, or all churches are a fraud, all churches misuse money, whatever that big thing is. Number one, it's untrue. Number two, that's unhelpful. That's just not helpful. We know churches are actually responsible for a ton of charity in the world, right? And then to say, okay, which ones are fraud? Well, I've been watching this news and it's just getting to me. Okay, well then let's go down that rabbit hole. Where did that come from, right? That's so much more helpful in my opinion than just being like, well, you're right, all churches are fraud. And then before you know it, you've lost community. Like the problem with making everyone the villain is you're the only hero. And now you've lost community. So that's what I found too, is like a lot of these people that have deconstructed, one of the things that they've like missed is the community. They said church is really good at community. I mean, name me another institution that does potlucks, like on the regular. I'm not saying they're good, but we do them.
I'm thinking.
Nursing home? I don't know.
Nursing home. I say Little League. Would Little League?
Little League.
I feel like
no, it's just snacks. It's like Capri Suns and
but
oranges.
still, it's sort of a potluck. I mean, I think back in my days, like there was a plethora of gummies and not, like no, like not like yeah. It's,
okay. Plethora of gummies, Justin. That's what you remember from Little League? Wow.
Yeah, I know.
So you get it. Like the problem with throwing everything out is you're
bingo
the hero.
nights. Would bingo nights be a potluck situation?
I never went to bingo nights.
I'm just trying
You
to
gamble?
think. No.
Oh, okay. Oh my word.
I'm just deconstructing right now, man. It's just man. All right. Somebody that's listening.
Yeah.
Somebody that's listening and they're either going through this thing alone, and they've got these questions. They've had these pieces in their life come up that probably doesn't allow them to move forward in their faith. Mm-hmm. And then the other side, somebody that has someone going through it, right? And I think when we say that, that's the kinder way of saying you're really going through it too.
Yeah.
Right? But
if you love that person, you're engaged with what they're doing.
Be doing it with them, right? So to those people that are listening, and you had 2 minutes to talk to them, 1 minute to talk to them, to tell them something
one apiece
that would be helpful.
1 minute apiece.
I mean, I'd say one apiece. Yeah.
Okay, maybe 1.5. We'll see.
What would it be?
Okay, so the person who's deconstructing, I'd say there is a migration happening towards Jesus, and a lot of the deconstruction maybe you're encountering and your frustration and your angst might be because you had hopes for something more pure, and you're really counting on it. And I would say let those hopes stay as you let go of some other things. Let's move towards the hope that you had that created this tension in your heart in the first place. Please don't throw the hope out. And then if there's no hope in the end, I guess we'll just deal with that. And then to the person who has a friend that's deconstructing, I'd say, please, 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 don't give canned answers. Like, let this open up your faith too. Have you ever done this? And the answer might be no, right? Because I think once you've done it, you're always doing it. It's like de-weeding a garden. You're like, I don't want it to choke out the beauty. And so that's what deconstruct. I don't think you ever stop. So have you ever done this? No, you've never done this? Okay. Let them kind of guide you in their questions and then be honest. Be honest. And put in front of you Jesus and Jesus as God, and then everything else according to what your friend's saying, let's go on that journey. Please commit to the journey. If it terrifies you to go on the journey, tell them you can't do this with them. Just tell them. Say, I'm not at a place, I don't think I can do this with you. That's going to be more helpful than you telling them they're going to hell. I'm serious. Or making them feel like they are. So if you've never done this before, but you're willing to, let's go. If you've never done it before, but you're just waiting to give them your answer, please don't go. That'd be what I'd tell both sides.
The book's going to help a ton of people.
Thanks.
And your messages help a ton of people. All of that stuff. It's great. We'll have the book, we'll have that linked in the show notes. You just click on it, and then it takes you to the Amazon, and you can buy it.
Yeah.
Right there. And then they ship it straight to your house.
A drone and everything.
It's
I think
crazy.
a drone comes and drops it off.
All of that's super helpful. Here's the deal, man. The most helpful thing, though, is knowing you.
Oh, thanks.
It really is. And I'm just so thrilled that you're on the North Point team, that you're a part of this community, that I'm able to have a relationship with you. I just appreciate your mind, and I appreciate your attitude. And I hope that more people come in contact with you and hear these pieces and hear these ideas and feel the true, genuine acceptance and navigation that you provide. You really do, man. So
thank you for saying
that.
So
thank you so much for all that you do. Thanks for writing this. Thanks for being on this team. Thanks for leading people this way.
I love it. Love the church.
I love you too.
Thanks.
Or did you say love?
What did love you, Justin.
No, what did you say? Did
I
you
said
say
I love our church? And then you said love you too.
I'm sorry, I got caught up. Did you say love you? I'll listen back. I think you said it. Riff listeners, listen.
Love you, Justin.
Thank you.
Okay.
You too, Justin. Man, what I do love is we're real close to getting Jeremy back right at that mic.
Oh, well.
Okay, so we're close. We're close.
Like next week.
Maybe
if he comes home from...
I don't know if it's next week.
Cortisone? Where's he at again?
Coeur d'Alene. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Yeah. The beauty of Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah. Can we name this The Beauty of Coeur d'Alene? And then they're like, that's nothing to do with it.
That's weird. But
it does bookend. It opens and closes with Coeur d'Alene.
That's so true. Preston, thanks for being here. Riff listeners, we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. We'll have a brand new episode every week, wherever you find podcasts.